G'day and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you haven't been here before. My name is Kathy and this is where I talk about all my pet hobbies. Today I will be featuring the fantasy author Raymond E. Feist. I read him, I believe, right after Edding, so it would have been way back in the late 80s or early 90s. And the first book I read is this, Magician. I really love this book. In fact, this is probably the best standalone fantasy book that I've ever read, even though it is part of a trilogy of books called, I think, the Riftwar Saga. But you could read this on its own because it is just so good. I think I'm going to hold it here because it's a bit heavy, this one. It's a big book, actually, as you can tell. It came out in 1982, and it is about two worlds, really, Midkemia and Kelluan. And I know I've mispronounced them, but really it doesn't matter. That is part of the fun of fantasy, is you get to decide how to pronounce these names. It involves a young boy pug. Always hated that name. It took me a long time to get over that. Who is training to be a magician on Midkemia when there is an invasion through a rift in space and time. I want to call them tsunami, and it's not, Surani I think it is, come through this rift to invade Midkemia, and Pug gets drawn into the other world of Kelluan. I don't really want to say much more. What I really love about this book and the trilogy itself, the Riftwar Saga, is that it is so intricate. It is extremely detailed. The plot moves along very quickly. You're not left thinking, oh, when am I going to get to the interesting parts? Because there's always something going on. And it is populated by so many wonderful characters. Very well drawn characters. Detailed, intricate, complicated. Characters like Pug himself, or Thomas his friend, or Arutha, or Macross the Black, who is kind of the villain, I guess, or one of the villains, and yet he's not quite as villainous as people like to make him out. I think what I really enjoyed about the book is it is not so black and white like Edding's was. The only complaint I would make is that there really aren't a lot of strong female characters, but that was not unusual back then, and it's always been my biggest complaint about fantasy, is that females are generally secondary characters. He has also continued to visit Midkemia and Kelluan. Another series he did, I don't even know if I would call it a series, is Krondor's Sons. It is Prince of the Blood and Jimmy the Hand. Now, Jimmy the Hand is a brilliant, brilliant character. Probably one of my favourite characters from the entire Riftwar Saga series. And I would definitely recommend those. However, Feist has also done a lot of other books in this same universe. And I will admit that I found those a little boring, a little repetitive. That is not to say that they're not good. Perhaps I had just had enough of Midkemia and I wanted something new. And it has been a very long time since I read any of those. So I can't really recommend them because I didn't enjoy them all that much. But as I said, it has been a long time. Perhaps now I will enjoy them more. I really don't know. If I do get around to reading them again, I will let you know how I find them. I should also point out that in many respects, the Riftwar Saga is traditional fantasy. It has elves, it has dwarves, it has magic, it has a young boy growing into power, which is a very common theme. But because it involves two separate worlds, I think it's a little bit more than your traditional fantasy. But if you don't like traditional fantasy, like Tolkien, because I have read some criticisms that the Riftwar Saga is too much like Tolkien, I don't agree with that. I think that there is a lot more to the story, and it isn't as black and white as Tolkien can be. Every person I have given this book to has absolutely loved it. Even a friend of mine who is not a fantasy reader absolutely loved this book because it is so well written and so detailed and intricate. I really love this book. In fact, the whole trilogy of the Riftwar Saga, which is 3 books, I think it is an excellent series and one that I would highly recommend to anyone. Now, how would I score this series? The Magician itself, I think, deserves at least an 8 to an 8.5. The Riftwar Saga, the 3 books, I would say are probably 7. And the Krondor Sons, I would score around 6 to 6.5. Even though they are very good, definitely they don't beat The Magician. This was such a good book, and unexpectedly so, I think. Now, in addition to the Riftwar Saga, Feist also co-authored a trilogy of books called the Empire Trilogy, which take place in Caliwan, the other world. And he co-authored that with Janny Wurts, who was originally an illustrator or fantasy artist, I believe. In my opinion, the Empire Trilogy is more political rather than fantasy, even though it does take place in this universe. So of course there is some magic involved. There is also some crossover with some of the characters from the Riftwar Saga. It is about a young woman who comes to power in Caliwan and the difficulties that she faces, partly because of her sex and partly because of politics itself. I do recommend the series if you like reading about strong women and more political, I guess, commentary. But as I said, it isn't strictly fantasy. As to the score I would give it, I think I would give it a 5 to 5.5. Yeah, I know, I am tough. Well, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know what you think of today's author and whether you have read any of his books. You know, I always love to hear your opinions, and you can put them down in the comments or you can contact me on Instagram. As usual, thank you guys very much for hanging out with me, and if you like this video, you can give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to my channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.